Hey everyone, welcome to Unique Ways with Thomas Gerard, an audio podcast. I had a really great guest on today. He's spent 14 years leading teams to success at organizations like Mailchimp, InVision, and Resolve to Save Lives. He's also a trusted voice in the design industry as an author, consultant, and co-host of one of the most popular design podcasts. Please join me in welcoming Aarron Walter. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
You ready for 20 questions?
Hit me.
Question one, tell me a little bit more about yourself. What do you do?
What do I do? So I co-host a podcast called Design Better, as you alluded to, with Eli Woolery. We explore the intersection of design and technology and the creative process that drives it through conversations with well-known designers and tech folks, and also creative people like David Sedaris, John Cleese, Ed Catmull, lots of different types of people.
Great. And just a note for our audience, if you want to check out the other half of the Design Better podcast, check out our episode with Eli Woolery. Number two, what's a key piece of knowledge that makes you different?
Key piece of knowledge that makes me different. I am not afraid to try new things. Through my life, I've kind of had different passions um, that I throw myself into, and when it's time for something new, I'm not afraid to try that out, even though I don't have the training or the background. I like to learn new things and try new things.
Awesome. Question three, why this of all things? Why do you do what you do?
Um, Podcasting in particular is perfect for somebody like me because I'm so curious. I want to learn from other people, and there are a lot of smart people out there. I also am a bit of a storyteller, someone who has a background in teaching, um, and I love the idea of learning for myself, but also helping other people learn. Maybe that's why you do what you do as well with this podcast. So, talking to smart people is a great way to grow yourself.
Awesome. One more note for the audience. If you are interested in the design podcast, check out one of our early supporters, Debbie Millman. She runs a really great. Number four is difficult to answer for some people, but the question is, what does your future look like?
Hmm. What's my future look like? Well, no one really knows. Anyone who thinks they know is probably deluding themselves. Um, my intentions for my future are to continue exploring new spaces. I'm interested in philosophy. I'm interested in history. I'm interested in music. I've been learning to play guitar. So I'd say the next 10 years of my life are about learning and mastery of new subjects.
Great. Number five, we say is unique to this show. And the question is, let's talk about location. How does the notion of place play into what you do?
I think place is important. My assessment of the way that a lot of people think is that they have to be in a major metropolitan area like New York, like San Francisco, where all these big businesses are headquartered and located, LA, and other places. But it turns out that you can choose a different place that is a lower cost of living. As long as it's close to a major international airport, you can pretty much get anywhere you want to go pretty quickly. And if it's a community where there are creative people, creative thinkers who are stimulating, we all have access to the web, so we can be part of a community locally, but we can also be part of a global community through the web. So I think this idea of geo arbitrage, working in a place that you love, that's good for your lifestyle, your family, your goals as a human being, and also doing work globally on a global stage, where you can also earn a salary that's more like what you would make in a major metropolitan area. That's called geo arbitrage. You end up with um, more savings and less spending.
Nice, I love it. Number six, if you had to start from the beginning, what advice would you give your former younger self?
So I've asked this question a lot on another one of my podcasts called Reconsidering, which explores how to live a more fulfilling life. And almost everyone says something like the same thing. And I'm going to offer the same advice here, which is to not worry so much. Things are going to work out. And we spend a lot of our lives in anxiety and worry. How am I going to make rent? What's next in my job and my career and so forth. And in reality, that anxiety doesn't usually get us where we want to go. So worry less and be curious.
Great. And what's a day in your life?
What's a day in my life? What does it look like?
Hmm.
Um, it looks like getting up early. I meditate. I write in a journal, and that's sort of to collect my thoughts and just have a record of life because my memory's not that great. That I felt like a lot of life was just passing by, and I didn't know what happened, which makes it harder to learn. Um, I will do some sort of exercise. Doesn't have to be, super intense exercise. And I'm not a fitness buff, but I'm also trying to keep my body alive as long as I can. I take my kids to school, make them breakfast and stuff. And then I usually walk my dog for a few miles, practice some guitar, and then I get ready for the workday. So I spend time I work from home in a space that I love. And I usually have some meetings on some side projects, doing projects with Google and some other folks. I have podcast interviews and, things will go through the day. And then by 4:30, 5 o'clock, I'm cooking and kids are coming home and more dog walking and then a little bit of downtime.
Great. And I'm excited to hear you respond to number eight. The question is, lifelong learning is a popular topic. How do you stay up to date?
Yeah, I read a lot. I last year I read about 75 books.
Mm.
So I read a lot and I actually have a hard time just sitting down and reading a book, turning a page. So I learn through my ears. I listen to audiobooks.
Mm.
I'm usually pretty focused on the types of things that I'm learning. Sometimes it's novels, fiction, and sometimes it's nonfiction. Fiction's a great way to just it's a bit like a dream or it's a thought experiment of what life might look like or how you might respond in a particular situation in a different time and place. And I also read a lot of nonfiction. Um, and I'm trying to fill gaps. There's stuff that I didn't learn in school. I wish I would have learned. So I'm just trying to, read some of those books that I never read. And just I keep pulling on the thread of like authors reference this author or this thinker or whomever this passage in time, and then I go find my next read is that piece of the continuum. So I'd say reading is a huge part of my lifelong learning goals.
Great. And nine is about tools. What tools do you use? Are you both digital and analog?
Sure. I mean, these days, everyone's using some sort of digital tools. One of my favorite tools is Bear. It's a simple notes app. I keep track of every single book that I've ever read in one note that goes back for years. I find that useful, and I go back to that all the time. Simple, like to-do lists that are not fancy or over. There's no major philosophy there. People get super nerdy about that. Really important to me. I keep medical notes every time I go to a doctor. I write down notes of what we talked about, what was prescribed, what my next goals are, or what I should be doing medically. That is really important for just longevity and continuity of care. So I'd say just a simple notes app is perhaps the most valuable thing. Um, I use a Moleskine daily planner as my journal. So just one page a day where I'm, have a headline and I write um, sometimes it's what happened. Sometimes it's sort of like what I've been thinking about, how I notice I'm changing or the world's changing. Um, Other important tools for me. I believe in mechanical watches. I believe in being a little less plugged in and tuned into every single notification in the world. I like that the watch that I wear every day, it's 50 years old and it still keeps really good time. Um, I don't have to adjust it. Maybe I adjust it like once a month. It's off like a couple minutes or something like that. It tells me the date and time. It doesn't tell me anything else. And I love that. So, um, to a certain degree, simplicity. Um, I think those are the major tools in my life that I rely on the most.
Nice. And halfway number 10, how do you deal with work-life balance?
So I'm in a different phase of my life. When I was in my 30s and 40s, especially, I didn't really have work-life balance. It was really work. It was just work, work, work. And I was obsessed with my work, and my identity really, my personal identity was my work identity. And so when I stopped, when I would transition from one job to the next, I had a bit of an existential crisis of like, who am I and what am I about if I'm not associated with this brand, this role, and this team that I've been leading. Um, so at this point in my life, I index on the other side. I like work as a way to be mentally engaged, socially engaged. It's good to make money, have cash flow. That's good as well. But at this point in my life, I index more heavily on what's fulfilling and learning. And I think that it's worth noting. We don't really realize it until we're a little further on in life that there is a significant opportunity cost for working. When we are working full time for an employer, I mean, they pretty much own you. They dictate when you can go take a break, have a vacation, how much leisure time you can have. You really need to be present and committed to your work life. Um, and that's just sort of the reality of things. And one way to look at that is you can do that for a season of your life, let's say 15, 20 years, and hopefully do well and be conservative and save some money in that time to buy yourself time later on. Because time is the most important commodity. So I think the idea of work-life balance, you know, push hard while you're young and while you have the energy and the faculties, save a lot, and then know when it's time to punch out or transition into a less high burn role.
Nice, that's awesome. Number 11, if you weren't doing what you do now, what would you be doing?
Um, I'd like to be an anthropologist or I love history. I guess, you know, teaching anthropology, I think, is the idea of traveling and investigating history, the history of the human experience. Um, I think that would be really fun and interesting. I wish I were a good enough musician to be a professional musician, but I'm so far from that. um, I love design, though. I do love design and thinking about how people live and how to create a great experience. Um, I host my wife and I have an Airbnb that we host people and we love creating an experience for people. I could see myself just like doing a whole lot of that because I think it's fun on an entrepreneurial level and also fun on a human level too.
Perfect. And 12, what would you not like to do with your career?
Um, I don't want to give my entire life to somebody else. I don't want to feel owned and controlled. Um, you know, yeah, I want latitude and freedom. I think these days I think more entrepreneurially. Um, so I don't really want to work full time for another person.
Great. And how about a favorite word, quote, or sentence?
Well, our family motto is we can do hard things because
Hmm.
Discomfort is, it's fleeting. And the way that you push forward in your life, you grow, you discover extraordinary experiences, you open up new opportunities is by doing hard things. So we can do hard things.
And how about a least favorite word, quote, or sentence?
I deserve it.
Mm. If you had to pick one word to describe yourself, what word would you choose?
Curious.
What keeps you up at night?
Nothing these days. I mean, I'm not super worried the way I was, say, 20 years ago, where I'd be worrying about work and processing that. Um, as a parent, I do worry. I've got my oldest son is a teenager, and the stakes only get higher. So if there's anything I'm worried about is how to raise good human beings.
Nice. And final stretch here, number 17. What's a dream you're chasing?
I want to be competent playing music. I want to understand music and, be able to sit down and play with people and know what I'm doing.
Nice. And what inspires you?
Um, Other people who are as curious as I am, who are reading, who are investigating other things, who are traveling, who are just learning. Um, I love encountering people who are passionate and they dedicate themselves to a passion.
Nice. And last couple here. Any advice you'd like to share?
Um, I don't know that I do have good advice for people. Well,
Okay.
if I were giving, to go back to one of your previous questions, advice that I would have given myself when I was younger, I wish I would have started meditating earlier, because
Mm,
it's really helpful to just understand how your brain works, like what
mm,
your brain is doing, and how so much of life is just the automaticity of the mind.
mm,
So I guess advice to myself and perhaps advice to others is, meditation can be helpful in understanding yourself.
Great. And lastly, number 20, how can our listeners keep tabs on you? What's our call to action?
The best way to keep tabs on what I'm up to is to visit designbetter.com. Tune into the podcast. The fact that your listeners are tuned into your show means that they're curious, they want to learn more, and they want to hear from other people. So designbetter.com is a great place to go. Check out some of our past interviews with some interesting folks. And if it's interesting, there's also a premium version of it called Design Better Plus that gets you ad-free episodes, and you can attend our monthly AMAs with some really amazing people in design and technology.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being on. I'm so inspired by your podcast and what you're doing there. I think definitely all of you go check it out, Design Better. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.